In the previous videos, we've talked about map charts and we've talked about category charts. In this video, we're going to take a more detailed look at XY charts. So with XY charts, you are providing two numeric values that are used to determine where the plot goes on an x-axis and on a y-axis. So if you look at the images that we have on the slide, you can see that we have x and y-axis. For every row of data we're dealing with, it's a data point that's placed on that chart. This is not summarizing the data like we're familiar with our category charts and with our map charts. Instead, each row becomes its own point on the chart itself. In addition to identifying what's going to cause the x-axis and the y-axis plot points, you're also going to be providing something called a series title. And a series title determines a few things. When you name something a series title, that's going to identify the color of the chart item set by the series title. It'll give a name for that series title and the legend for that color. And it allows you to associate it with other data points on the same chart. So by using the same series title across different types of XY chart items, you end up giving them all the same color and all the same label on your chart. Similar to the map chart and category charts that we talked about in the earlier videos, when you place an XY chart onto your report, it's going to place down an XY chart. It also places an XY chart item. Now for the XY chart, if we select that, we can go into the properties, go into the chart section, and you'll see, once again, we're talking about titles, and we're identifying the draw as property, which tells you how you want this XY chart to be represented graphically. So for my titles, I give it a title for the overall graph, I give a title for the x-axis, and I give a title for the y-axis. Under the draw as, you get to select whether you want to do something different than the default line style XY chart. For the XY chart item, there are three properties that you can set. The X is going to be what to plot on the x-axis. The Y is going to be what to plot on the y-axis. Those could be a column value. They could be an expression. The other property is the series title. And a series title allows you to give an identifier to what this data point means. When you give us a series title, when you give Genero Report Writer a series title, it's going to assign it a color, and it's going to use that series title as the label in the legend for that data point. Unlike a map chart and a category chart, you can add multiple XY chart items to an XY chart. If you have multiple XY chart items, how do you tell them apart on the graph? You tell them apart by giving each item a different series title. If you end up giving two XY chart items the same series title, then they're going to have the same color when they appear on the graph, and they're going to share the same legend. Now, an XY chart is a chart that's typically used to compare and contrast what's happening when the x-axis goes up and down. How does that react on the y-axis? It's typically used in mathematics and scientific plot point gathering. And unfortunately, our custom demo database just doesn't really contain the type of data that's going to display well in an XY chart. So for the demo, what I want to do is open up the reports project workspace that was provided by the installation. And we're just going to look at one of the reports that's included, the XY chart report, and take a look at how it's structured. So here we have an XY chart report. We've got its mini page, we have an XY chart at the top, and then we have an XY item. If I go to my data view, it's pulling in from an XML file we have out there, and we have a series with item.x and item.y. Now, the series title, it's actually pulling from the data itself. So in this case, depending upon what the series title is sent in from the XML file, that's going to identify what the color is. Let me go ahead and execute this report. And you can see this report come across as trigonometric functions. So the x and the y coming in from that file must represent the trigonometric functions. And we can also see the type of report that's being displayed. If I go back to my studio, and I look at my chart itself, I can go down and I can see that it's providing an area chart. Let me just change that so it's a line chart. If we save and we execute this once again, you can now see it's being displayed as a line chart. Let's talk a little bit more about the report structure. So for all of the charts that I demoed, I've had the chart being the first child of the page root. I then place the trigger as the child of the chart itself. And then at the very end in the on every row, I place the chart item. And by doing this, because there was no breaks, I wasn't breaking and starting a new chart at any point, I would have a single chart on my report, and that single chart was going to contain every item of information, but summarized and put into that one chart. If you want to have more than one chart in your report, for example, let's say I wanted a chart for every store, well, then I would make that map chart the child of the store number trigger. That way, every time the store number report trigger is hit when the store number changes, I would be starting a new map chart. If I wanted to have a chart for every order in my database, I would simply make that map chart a child of the order num trigger. The last tip here says the item object should be in lower of the key and value groups. So because my item number was based upon an order num in this example, I have it down. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be on every row if you want every row to be included in the summarization. That completes our look at working with charts and graphs. One of the questions that typically comes out when we teach this is asking whether or not we can have multiple charts within the same report. The answer with the 2.21 is there are workarounds that allow you to do this. However, they're not things that are readily apparent in the product. As of 2.30, you're going to be able to do a concept of subreports, which is designed to allow you to do things like having multiple charts existing in the same report. So if you need to get it accomplished with 2.21, I would suggest looking at our forum or contacting your local support center. If you're able to move to 2.30, you're going to be able to look into the concept of subreports and multiple reports within the same report file or the same report design document, and that's going to allow you to have multiple graphs and charts in a single report.